Which team is the only team that can trip up UConn's title defense? You're Locked On UConn.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we're live. Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Like, subscribe, give it a rating, argue, engage, however you want to go about it. Just be respectful with each other. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today. You'll get $150 in bonus bets. If your first bet of $5 or more wins, visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. All right, our first segment, I promise I'd tell you the only team that could derail UConn's back-to-back titles. And that team is the UConn Huskies. Quite frankly, you heard Dan Hurley say this last night in a huddle. This is about us. It's not about them. And he was pointing over to Marquette. It's not about their fans. All of us on Twitter that interact with each other, whether it's respectfully or disrespectfully, I hope everyone knows that it's not ever that serious. It is strictly you're excited about your fandom. You're excited about your team beating the other team. And right now, UConn looks like the only team that can win this tournament. And I say that not as a UConn fan, lifelong. I've covered college basketball off and on for the last 10 years. This is not a situation where I'm speaking in hyperbole. This is an absolute fact. Let's look at some stats. All of UConn's games going forward will be in neutral sites where they will be heavily tilted in their favor as the fans that travel, whether it's to Madison Square Garden for the Big East tournament, where we're going to be playing the first and second round games in Brooklyn, not too far from Stores, Connecticut in general, and then Boston for the regional finals. If there was ever a regional advantage that reminds me of it reminds me of when Duke would walk to the Final Four having either Charlotte or Greensboro as the place where they would, make them go to the next rounds. It is very similar to that. I've seen it in the past with Kansas when they're in the Midwest. Purdue's going to have a similar situation when they're in Indianapolis. But when we're talking about UConn, their regional fandom and what it means to be a UConn fan, we travel. And let's look at the stats of their record in their last 15 neutral site games. This stat is all over Twitter, but I got my information from my friend, thanks my brother Chris Smith, not the legendary basketball player from UConn, Chris Smith, my friend Chris Smith from Meriden, Connecticut, at Bad Choice Milk. You can find him on X. 14-1 in their previous neutral site games. 14-1. So if you're going to tell me that we're going to get tripped up by a 9 seed or a 4 seed or another team that we're going to play across the board, I'm going to ask you, how are they going to do it? Let's go back to last night. I had Cy Alexander on the show previewing the Marquette game, talking about what it would be like to be in Dan Hurley's shoes, also talking about what it would be like in Shaka Smart's shoes, right? They went into Milwaukee last night at the Pfizer Center. Marquette's senior night. First thing that Cy talked about in this game, and if you don't want to take it from me, take it from a coach that won almost 400 Division I games. There was an emotional lift that Marquette got. UConn comes out of the gates, typically like they always do, playing Chris, 5-0, quick little 5-0 spurt, all Tristan Newton, all on him. Then it looked like they were going to literally run Marquette out of their gym and embarrass them. And a couple missed layups at the rim by Steph and multiple misses. Marquette punches back, and they go on their own 12-0 run. So now it's 12-5. The very next possession, UConn gets it down. Cam Newton. Cam Spencer hits a three. Also another killer Cam. So right there, I knew that this was not going to be a repeat of Creighton, where we were on the road and we struggled, to quell that whole kind of avalanche of offense. And UConn then goes on in response with their own 30-12 run after Marquette's 12-0 run. A lot of other teams would have packed it in. said we have the Big East title, coast, rest their starters, rest on their laurels. Not this team. This is the Dan Hurley-led team. They took a 12-point lead into the half. And I just felt right there that we were in good shape. So how does this team beat itself? By making it out about anything other than winning. And I'm going to go exactly where you guys think with this. I love Cam Spencer with a capital L. He's on pace to be the only player in college basketball history to have a 50, 40, 90 shooting season. 50% from the floor, 40% from three, and 90% from the free throw line. But the kicker is that's been done before with a 3-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. He's a rare college basketball player that kind of melds his shooting ability, his instincts, his love of team play, and not really caring if he scores. I think I forget who said it last night, Cam should shoot more. It just wouldn't be his game. I don't think he's a volume shooter. He's a opportunistic shooter. He is the guy you want when you're trying to quell a 12-0 run. When everything breaks down, we have two of those guys. I think Tristan Newton would be 1 and Cam would be 1A. So, but he said it himself when he got that technical. It was bad timing. This is a quote from David Borges from the Connecticut Insider. Bad timing on my part, for sure. I think I made it an 11-point game. It was actually 14. But they get 2 free throws, and they hit a 3 or something. It's a different ball game. I apologize to the guys. My emotions got the best of me. It won't happen again. Look, he's right. It was a 3. It made it 70-56, in fact, with 8 minutes to go on the dot. With that tech, they made one of the 2 free throws and a quick jumper, and then they got a defensive stop. And all of a sudden, the lead is going from 9, and then they hit a 3, and it was cut to 8. He also missed 2 wide open threes after that technical. Turns out he's not perfect, but it's one of those things where I can't imagine. I've been in this. This is going to sound so out of left field, but I've been in this situation before in my life personally. Not on a basketball court, but in a professional sport as well. I was a professional tennis player. I was never the type to hold my tongue. If I felt like I was being cheated, if I felt like there was some kind of any type of emotional edge that I could get. But if you let that fire burn too hot, you get burned. And there were a few times where you say too much and then the person comes back on you and then you're kind of left there going, well, there's really nothing to say. You feel silly, you feel foolish. But unfortunately for Cam, he has teammates to worry about. I didn't have to worry about that when I was on the court. It was just me. I had to talk to my teammates after who were on my team, who I probably embarrassed them. But it was one of those things where it's a little bit different in a team sport. But I totally understand his mentality. I love his mentality. I live and breathe that mentality. But it's a harder sell when you do something to hurt your team, even in a game where you are having an incredible game. So that tech kind of derailed that kill shot. The mojo was completely stopped. I think it would have been an easy 15+ point victory if they continued and they don't get that technical. He doesn't talk to the Marquette bench. We already have this bullseye. There's no need to make it personal. Let sleeping dogs lie. I have no problem with him fist pumping to the crowd. That's different. Fans are rude and they were saying some interesting things back to him, which I'm sure is not acceptable. Hopefully Marquette fans know that as well. But they were flatlined, and that tech was their resuscitation that they needed to make a comeback. And in the end, they fell short, and that's great for us. But it's hard to be critical of this team and really kind of nitpick the things they do wrong. But if there's one thing I wanted to focus on last night is please, guys, just run your offense. I thought at the end of that game when they were kind of trying to run clock, it felt like I was watching an old school football game where the team is up 3 possessions and they just start to run the ball. They play real conservative. They run clock, and the other team slowly starts to gain momentum. In the end, Marquette ran out of steam. But the reality is that game and the end of that game was totally self-inflicted. Marquette was doing nothing that bothered UConn. We stayed at home on their 3-point shooting. They shot 37% from 3. We shot up to 50%, which is another crazy stat line. But please run your offense for a full 40 minutes. As Dan Hurley likes to say, the music never stops. And the music was even sweeter last night now that Alex Karaban is back. More after this. Alex Karaban is back, baby. Karaban Gang, AK-47, the Cyborg, whatever your nickname is or that you use, the kid's a winner. And when he's knocking down threes consistently, it's not only makes UConn unstoppable, it makes them elite, the elite of the elite. A good friend of mine that does a radio show locally here said, UConn's good is better than anyone else's good, and I couldn't agree more. So it makes good games become great games, and it makes it almost not inevitable because anything can happen, but all things being equal, when Alex Karaban plays a game like he played last night, it makes them almost unstoppable to the point where it's not if they're going to win, but by how much. So he snapped out of his slump last night, obviously. 23 points, 5 rebound performance, 5 for 9 from 3, to really put to bed all the AK is struggling conversations. And there were a few on Twitter circles. I don't typically go into spaces. I'm sure that's been talked about there. But what Alex provides, even though he's been giving us another knockdown shooter most of the year and last year, is an outlet for when things break down. He's always the guy trailing. I think Tristan Newton should be the player of the year, but if Alex is going to be 5 for 9 from 3, what does that do when you're the opposing coach? If you're the scout, because I don't know if you guys know this, but every assistant has a different scout and it rotates. So last night, I think they said Luke Murray had the scout last night. I would love to interview some of the opposing UConn teams' assistant coaches to know what their scout looks like. Who are you trying to shut down? You try to slow down Tristan and Cam, Alex hurts you. Shaka tried to employ a little matchup zone and some man-to-man concepts that were different than what they normally do. But as Sai said yesterday on the show, the great Sal Alexander, you are who you are, and this late in the season, I think they did a lot of that just to kind of mix it up to see if they could get them to stop making threes. 50% from 3 on the game, incredible, right? And when AK is the trailer on pull-up threes, those are kill shots. They demoralize the opponent. And it's one thing if Tristan creates, it's one thing if Cam creates, one thing if Castle is getting downhill. And even if it's one thing if you're posting up Donovan Clingan and he is dominating in the post. But then when you're able to drop it back to Alex in transition and backdoor screens, it's just an embarrassment of riches. And if there's one thing UConn fans universally understand, is passion for their team. As you can see, our eBay Motors is sponsoring this segment. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your ride or die, your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP. Bring that home with the win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. So look, I said Donovan Clingan is the most impactful player in college basketball, and that's still true. But AK is our glue guy. He can not only shoot, but he gets a lot of hustle points. And I'm talking about deflections, diving on the floor, creating jump balls, rebounds. His ability to set screens backdoor kind of subtly, like where he's almost feigning like he's going to go to the top, to kind of come onto the edge and around the elbow, and then drop a back screen for Clingan. Just, it's a huge part, and it creates such a value to him. And then just to add some of it too, he's one of our best shot blockers with his defensive instincts. And I'm not saying he's, you put him in the middle and he's a presence like DC is, but as far as timing, I think you saw it much earlier in the year. I think people challenge him because they don't think he's as athletic as he is. But he is I don't think even he would say he's fast, because he's not. But just like him, he's got great anticipation, and that leads to, like the deflections we talked about, steals, blocks. When he scores, he's a complete player. When he doesn't, he's the glue guy. So he's effective either way. I got to give some love right now to Hassan Diarra, Haas, headband Haas. Tyler Kolek or no Tyler Kolek, he loves playing against the Golden Eagles. I mean, stat stuffer game, played probably 5 or 10 more minutes than he normally does because Steph was in foul trouble, which is rare. But in 25 minutes, he had 9 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, and a steal. I feel like he had more steals, but that's official. Hustle Haas, whenever he comes in, he calms me down as a fan. I think there are certain players that you really identify with, and he's the older guy. He comes in, he kind of runs the show. There's not much of a drop off between him and Steph. And what I mean by that is Steph immensely talented and going to be an NBA player? Absolutely. Is Steph my guy? Yes. Do I love Steph and his mom on Twitter posting amazing content? Yes. But Hassan is that kind of, it's silly to say this because I'm 20 years older than him, but the OG 23-year-old senior that hopefully comes back next year. Save that for another day. But he is a phenomenal all-around player, and he gives them veteran leadership that only a backup point guard can. And I don't even consider that. I don't even consider Haas a backup point guard. That's his role. But you can't tell me that if he started for us and Steph was coming off the bench, I don't think the dynamic would change much. People can argue with me on that. I'm just saying I think he's a calming influence. He gets passes on time. He's not the same physical specimen that Steph is, but what he brings is the leadership to know when it's time to go to the basket and when it's not. And I think Steph has that innately. And I think, dollars to donuts, Haas is a better finisher at the rim for his size, 6'2", maybe 6'3", gets to the rim pretty effectively. Steph had a tough night last night of finishing, but I don't expect that to continue. And look, this team is firing on all cylinders. Last thing I'll mention before we get to the last segment of the day is Donovan Clingan was active. The whistle started to turn in the second half. And if you look up, how many fouls did Donovan have? Maybe one the whole game? At one point, I got a text from a buddy of mine who I grew up with in Meriden who went to UConn. I think he's the graduating class of 03. Shout out, Mike. He texted me and said, hey, the irony of today is all of our guards have 3 and 4 fouls, and Donovan only has 1 or none at that time. I think he finished with 1. And I said this last night on X. I think he gets a terrible whistle almost every time out. And I think part of that is because he is not as aggressive, even though I thought he was aggressive last night and he still wasn't getting calls. But I think his game is more, it's not, I hate to say the word finesse, but it's more of a finesse game now. He doesn't take it, drop step and dunk on people. He takes it, drop steps, jump hook, easy layup. So as he gets stronger, God, I would love to see in the Big East tournament, and even now, before we even get to the Big East tournament against Providence, just Donovan having a game where he turns into someone, discards, and just dunks all over them. Even if he gets an offensive foul, who cares? Just send the message. Well, coming up, I don't know when the last time any team has ruined 2 senior nights, but that's what UConn is poised to do next. Just a reminder, Locked On now streams 24/7 national sports on YouTube and Amazon Fire TV. Catch Locked On Sports today for all day coverage of top sports stories with local and national experts, available on the free Fire TV channels app. Get it wherever you get your YouTube Fire TV channel app. Good stuff. Let's talk about our sponsor. Amazon Fire TV. Let's get that overlay. Fire TV is your destination for sports, for live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experience with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV, whether it's opening weekend for baseball, which is coming up, or college basketball, which has the NCAA tournament, and of course the Big East tournament. You want to have a Fire TV. Personally, I think it's great. If I ever have to travel, I take my Fire TV stick. It's great for my kids. They can plug it into any smart TV if we ever have to be on the road, and we never miss a thing. So Fire TV recently created a TV channel that delivers a constant supply of the latest content. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big league, pro leagues, and college conferences as well. Fire TV lets you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more. Keep up to date with all the latest in the world of sports, March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news shows. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Just trust me on this. Learn more. Visit www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Okay. One senior night down. One senior night to go. We travel to Providence, a mere 43 miles away. This will be the biggest highlight of the year for the Providence Friars since Blue Demon Deegan from Twitter fame made Divine Providence. This is their Super Bowl. Well done film, by the way. Providence is essentially the 1999 to 2003 Red Sox. Before they beat the Yankees, it's a good team, underdog mentality, but nobody took them serious. Fans are miserable. They have irrational confidence. And with that comes some danger. In the last meeting, they were more physical than the Huskies. They played an awful game, but it was officiated awfully too. And I say awful because I don't think either team played pretty. And I don't think any game against Providence will end up being pretty. When I agree with a Providence fan on X about officiating during a game, it means the refs are either uniting together to piss us all off, or it's just an almost unwatchable product. So, what are the stakes for this game? For us, not a lot, but I'll get to that in a second. Providence needs this game so much because it needs to be considered as a serious NCAA tournament team. It's a resume builder. We're the number 2 team in the country. We're the best team in the country. And UConn would love nothing more, personally, as a fan, and I think as the players, to send a message to them that in order for you to be a tourney team, you shouldn't have waited this long to get that signature win. I'm sorry, because it's not coming against us. Providence and all bubble teams are like the kid who didn't study for his test and are scrambling for Cliff Notes last second. But we're the teacher that says, we're not buying it. We're not buying it. We're not buying you, Providence. I think the Big East actually did UConn a favor with this 3 games in a week. They're all bulletin board games. What was Seton Hall? Revenge. Our only Big East loss outside of Creighton. Marquette. Send a message to this conference that it's ours. Nobody else's. Providence. You don't belong on the same court as us. And you won't use us to propel yourself into the NCAA tournament. There's no way. So in a weird twist of fate, we're playing spoiler as a favored team. And I know nothing would make Dan Hurley happier than sending Providence and their fans to the NIT. There's no love lost between recruiting issues, between just fan disrespect. I don't see there being a game where Providence beats us. I know they play tough against us. I know they have that home court is special. Is it the Dunkin' Donuts Center? I don't know if they changed it. I think it used to be. I do respect the Providence fans. I know that's going to sound silly after all that I just said. But there's something about having a rational confidence in your team, because I feel like every UConn fan had a rational confidence when we weren't playing well, when we didn't have the type of the talent that we have right now. But the thing that separates us from them is a belief in in our irrational ways or confidence that we've won national championships, that we've been to Final Fours. Now, Providence has been to the Final Four. It's probably been since the Reagan administration, but I'm not splitting hairs here. Can't say they haven't done it, but I think Providence is still searching for their identity, and UConn has had their identity for years. All they do is pizza, insurance, and titles. That's what we do. We have the best pizza in the world. It's the insurance capital of the world, and we win chips. That's what we do. I don't see us losing this game. We'll talk a little bit more about it tomorrow in tomorrow's program. It's one of those things where the only way that UConn will lose this game is a very similar scenario that Cy and I talked about with the Marquette game, is if they get caught up in the emotion of Providence's senior night and they can't stop the tide. They did it against Marquette. I can't see why they wouldn't do it against a Providence team that's not as good. So before we go, Locked On has a bunch of great stuff going on right now. Locked On streams 24/7 national sports on YouTube and Amazon Fire TV. Catch Locked On Sports today for all-day coverage of top sports stories with local and national experts, available on the free Fire TV channels app. This has been a Locked On UConn podcast. As always, peace, love, and go Huskies.